Okay, hello again. We'll go back to English this week. The focus, I think, for today is just going to be to practice more. I know we did a little bit the second half of last week. So the way I wanted to structure the class was I'll be here for 5 weeks total. We'll be talking about English. The first 2.5-ish are more focused on, like, what can I teach you, some different rules, some different things that you're going to see on the test. And the second half, I wanted to focus more on practicing and seeing the things that we learned in class in context on the actual test. So today we'll probably go through, just finish this test, and if we have time we can maybe do one more passage, but let's aim to get 3 done today. We did 2 last time. Let's hope to get 3 done today. And to be honest, it's better if we go slower as a class. If you guys are asking more questions, you're going to get more out of it. Doing the tests here with me and with all of these things and resources on the board aren't going to help you if you don't ask, because then what's the difference of doing them here or doing them at home? So try if you can. If you get one wrong, and even if you're the slightest bit unsure, you think you know why, but maybe you're not sure, ask. It's completely okay too, and it's probably helping someone else out too. So please ask as many questions as you can. So the page number is 431 in the practice test book. I know your guys is probably blue. Is it blue? Okay, yeah, blue. It'll be the same test though. We'll start on question 31. I think the way I want to do it is, so obviously we know we're aiming for 9 minutes. I'm going to leave up a timer here. Can everyone see this okay? Guys in the back, you good? Okay, so we'll go up to 9 minutes here, and I'll probably cut you off in 9 minutes and not let you continue. Obviously it's okay to go a little bit over those times, but just for now I want to be a little bit more strict while we're practicing, and then in your own practice you can adjust the times as you need, but just for the sake of the entire group, I'll cut it at 9 minutes. And then we'll go through all of the answers. And then I left this up here just so all of these questions that fit into these categories, I'm just going to talk about anyway. So if you have a question on those, great, because I'm going to talk about it anyway and I'll address it. And then I'll open it up for any other questions that you guys have that you were maybe unsure about or possibly got wrong, or maybe even didn't, just want some clarification and more explanation. We'll talk about those, and then we'll move on to the next passage, and we'll see if we can just finish the rest of this test. And with that, you can always go, once we get to the end of the test, I'll talk a little bit more about this, but there's an estimated score that you could get for doing this practice test, so we'll talk about that at the end a little bit. And yeah, is everyone good to get started? Got the book out? All right, cool. So let's go from question 31 to question 45. I'll give you 9 minutes here, and then we'll come together and talk again. Does that sound okay? All right. Is everyone ready? Okay, and start. All right. About 9 minutes there. It looks like everybody was done, so good. I would say I try to give a standardization of how difficult the passages were based on my experience with the actual test. And like I said last time, I think this book in general is quite a bit easier than the actual test. Let's say I'll try to put it on a scale from like 0 being the easiest passage ever and 10 being the hardest passage ever. And let's say the average ACT passage I would say is like a 6 or 7. This one I would rate more of like a 3 or 4. This one's a little more difficult than some of them in here, but again, overall, the actual test is going to be a little bit harder than this. So it's great to see everybody finishing really, really fast there, and hopefully we're getting really good accuracy on these ones. Is everyone ready for the answers? Okay. Let's start with 31. So 31 is D, 32H, 33B, 34G, 35A, 36H, 37D, 38J, 39C, 40F, 41B, 42H, 43D, 44H, and 45A. Okay, so keep in mind any questions you guys have. I'm going to start by covering the questions that we talked about last week, these more difficult ones. This one had a few, but overall I think they fit into one of these type of strategies pretty well. So the first question I would look at would be 34 here. 34, can someone tell me what type of question it is? The question says, at this point, the writer would like to provide specific information about, however you want to pronounce it, education. So what type of question would that be? Online, also feel free to chime in. Did someone say it over here? Top heavy, yep. I would agree with that. This question is giving you a specific revision task, and it's asking you to follow through with that task. So I'm hoping, like we talked about last week, everybody underlined that task. Here it's saying the writer wants to provide specific information. So that's the revision task. You're going to pick the answer that's the most specific, and don't worry about anything else, right? There is an important little distinction that in this question, I can't imagine threw very many of you off, but sometimes they'll do something similar to this that can be an issue. And it's important to remember that there's a misconception that happens a lot where students will think the longest answer is the most specific, which oftentimes that is true. When you have more words, you tend to be more specific. But that doesn't always hold true. So here, H technically is the longest answer choice, but I wouldn't say that's very specific. The way the human body works is extremely broad. And I don't think it's any different from answer choice F that says the science of the human body. Those are very, very similar, and like neither are very specific. However, G does provide some insight into what they mean by the science of the human body or the way the human body works. There's some specific anatomy and physiology are saying like, oh, this is what we're looking at specifically. So G would be the most specific there. D, not D. J is obviously pretty bad. It's one word. Can't really be that specific. And then F and H are really similar. So G there would be the most specific answer. Does that make sense? Does that make sense to everybody how we got that? Okay, good. The next one I would look at is 39 here. 39 says, at this point, the writer would like to provide the reader with a more specific definition. Okay, which of the following does that best? So someone that doesn't sit at this table, can someone tell me what type of question that is? I don't want to call on people. You guys got to help me out here. Online, you guys feel free to shout out if you know. We're looking at question 39. Sorry, go ahead.
Top heavy?
Yeah, I would agree with that as well. This one also looks like a top-heavy question. They're giving you a specific revision task again. They want you to just follow that task. And shocker, again, they're asking for something that's more specific. That tends to be a really common thing they ask for. So just keep that in mind. You're going to see that quite a bit. So yeah, again, you're looking for a more specific definition. So I would underline specific definition. Those are the main things you're looking at, and you're going to forget about everything else, like we've talked about. So out of those, a theory of child development is answer choice A. Okay. B says a philosophy of teaching. Okay, so A is definitely more specific than B, so I would eliminate B at this point. C says a means of fostering development and learning in children. So that one I would say is the most specific so far because it's encasing both A and B a little bit, where it's talking about a philosophy of teaching as well as child development. So at that point I would say C is the best answer choice, so I would eliminate A. And then D says a style of teaching utilized in many school districts. That provides some like pretty specific information, but again, the task says we're looking for a specific definition, not just specific information. And D doesn't really provide a definition. We don't care that it's utilized in many school districts, so I would eliminate that and choose C. Does that make sense how we get there? Okay, awesome. Last one here, 45. This one can be a little bit more tricky than the first two we've done, but I think overall, I would expect you guys did pretty well on this question. The question says, suppose the writer were to eliminate paragraph 4. This omission would cause the essay as a whole to lose primarily what? Can someone tell me what type of question that is? Go ahead, yeah. Yeah, it's a relevance or meaning question. It's saying, what is the purpose of this specific paragraph? And if you were to remove it, well, what would we lose? So it's asking what the relevance of that paragraph really is. And our strategies up here say refer to the main idea again, or imagine the passage without that word phrase paragraph. So in this sense, oh, it doesn't say paragraph, but in this sense, we're just removing that paragraph. And imagine we just stopped at the end of paragraph 3. What exactly is paragraph 4 providing to us? So if you read the paragraph, we're talking about, the first thing that kind of gives it away a little bit is it says today is the first word, today. Today, children are taught with the method in schools. Okay, doesn't matter. With increasing pressure on schools to provide quality education to a growing population. So that's another issue we're focusing on in current day. Visionary ideas continue to gain popularity. So all of these things are referring to current day, how we view our education system right now as a society. So if you were to remove this part, what would we primarily lose? Answer choice A says, relevant details about the current development and use of this education system. That makes a ton of sense because we are talking about things in current day, that like the current development of it. So that one is good. B says irrelevant details about the past development. So there's a few things wrong with that, right? Obviously these details aren't irrelevant, and also we're not talking about the past, we're talking about right now. So eliminate that. C says distracts the essay's primarily biographical tone. Okay, but I don't think this information is distracting, and again, I would consider this pretty relevant, so I would eliminate C. And then D says a conclusion that reiterates the main purpose of the passage. This is one where you do have to refer back to the main idea, because this is a reasonable answer choice a lot of the times, where if you were to remove the last paragraph, you would normally lose a concluding paragraph that restates the main idea. But in this case specifically, I don't think if you were to read the whole thing and understand the main idea here, I don't think this paragraph really is reiterating the main idea, because the rest of it is more talking about how this method was developed, and this doesn't really talk about that. It's more about how we're utilizing this method in current day. So I don't like D, therefore A would be the best answer choice. Do all of those make sense to everybody? Okay. Does anyone have any other questions they would like to look over? Nothing? We got them all right? Yeah. I mean, fair enough. There wasn't a ton to cover on this one. Just really quickly, 38 is kind of like an organizational question too that might be worth looking at. Remember we talked about making pairs of sentences? Is that up here? Yeah, pairs that fit together. They're asking us to move sentence 1 around here. And the idea to look for here is that it says her observation of these children inspired her life's work, blah, blah, blah. Okay, these children. Well, in the first sentence of a paragraph, you're saying these children. What children are you referring to? Who's these children? So that should be a hint that F maybe is not the best answer choice. And then from there you can deduce that, that sentence 4 is talking about these, like how the children specifically learn from their environment, and then it flows right into what sentence 1 is. So the best answer there would be after sentence 4. But no other questions? All right, let's go ahead and just go on to the next one then. Let's go from 46 to 60 here. I know someone just came in on Zoom, so we're on page 434 of the Blue ACT 10 book. I'll put up 9 minutes here, and then just do that passage, and we'll come back together and talk about it at the end. Is everyone ready? All right. And go ahead. Till 60. So about 9 minutes down there. Back to that scale. I would say this one's a little bit more realistic to what you might see on the actual test. Maybe like a 5 on this one, possibly even a 6. This one was a little bit more tricky. Some of the questions may have required a little bit more thought. But again, there was some that should have been pretty straightforward and taking you a pretty short amount of time. So don't stress if that one felt a little bit worse than the previous one it was supposed to. But still, I would hope we're doing pretty good overall. I'll go through the answers now, starting with 46. Is everyone ready? Okay, 46 was G, 47A, 48H, 49C, 50J, 51D, 52J, 53B, 54F, 55C, 56F, 57D, 58G, 59A, and 60H. Okay, with this one, there was definitely a few that were more challenging than others. Let's start with 51. So the question says, at this point, the writer wishes to emphasize the expansiveness of the metro system and the coverage that it provides. So they're giving you a revision task here. This is a top-heavy question. The author wants to emphasize the expansiveness. So they want to show how big this metro system really is and how much ground it covers, and how much space it covers. So as we're looking through the answer choices, A says each station serves a multitude of travelers. Okay, well that doesn't say anything about how big the stations are or how much ground they cover, so I don't like A. B says sometimes you have to walk as far as 9 or 10 blocks to get to the nearest station. Well, that would actually be the opposite. Now we're showing that it's not really that expensive because you have to walk so far to find one. So not that one. C says if you cannot read or understand French, you might have a hard time. Has nothing to do with what we're talking about. We want expansiveness. D says you cannot walk anywhere along the streets without encountering a staircase that descends to a metro station. That's the one that makes the most sense there because we're emphasizing that there's a lot of metro stations. Does that make sense to everybody? Okay, cool. I thought that one was pretty straightforward for a top-heavy question. Some of the answers were pretty silly there, but never know. 56. This one I think is a lot more challenging. I could see a lot more readily how people could get this one incorrect. So we're starting with, the question itself says, the writer wishes to add a relevant example to the paragraph without straying from the purpose of informing the reader as to how advantageous using the metro is. So they want to provide an example, but they want that to fall in line with the main idea, basically. So the answer choices are, again, this is a top-heavy question, right? We're following a revision task. F says, I once made a trip from the end of one line to the end of another with 3 transfers in between. Can't imagine how expensive such a taxi ride would have been. Okay, so here we're providing an example that's relevant to the information, so it's got that checked. And then also it is saying how advantageous the metro system is, because if you weren't to do that, then the taxi would be pretty terrible. So F makes good sense. G says, I always purchase a day pass for unlimited trips. Okay. I don't think, even just off of that, this really doesn't have a ton to, this isn't staying with the main purpose here, so I wouldn't really like that one. H says, I once accidentally got on a train going the wrong direction, but I simply transferred trains and was on my way. So this one, I'm assuming those of you that got it wrong picked this one. Was anyone brave enough to admit that? Yeah, okay. I feel like that one would probably be the most selected answer choice, to be honest. If not F, because this one, it provides an example and it kind of does show how advantageous the metro system is. If you mess up, you just go onto a different one, you transfer and you turn around. But the book doesn't think that provides enough advantageous context here, because the relevant example, what they want it to be is that, transferring is free. That's the important thing. so that you can transfer as many times to get to where you want. So they're saying the more transfers you make in an example, the better, to explain how advantageous it is. So here you went the wrong way, you transferred once and you're back on your way. Okay, that's good, but they think F is better because you've transferred multiple times and you're showing, using that example, that this is part of why the metro is so good, that you can transfer as many times as you want. So completely understandable. Don't feel bad if you picked H. I think that's a completely reasonable answer choice, but they like F a little bit better. I don't know if Manoj just told you this, but the ACT has this stupid thing in their fine print where they say it's like all high schools have this in AP tests and stuff too, where it's not always the right answer, but the best answer. And here you kind of have two right answers, and they think one is better than the other. I really wish they wouldn't do stuff like this. I think it's pretty unfair, but okay, whatever. So F is the correct answer there. J is kind of silly. It's telling you be careful not to lose your ticket. I mean, that's not talking about advantageous stuff at all. So F is the correct answer. Does everyone kind of understand where we're coming from with that one? Okay. Last one here that I had was 60. Again, this one kind of an organization thing where they're asking you to include a sentence. Where would it fit best? Here I would look for, again, like a type of pair. I'm not going to cover all of the different answer choices, but H here, if you look, it says before the last sentence in paragraph 3. If you could flip to paragraph 3, there, the last sentence says metro travel couldn't be easier. Okay, that doesn't give you a ton. The sentence before it gives you the context, where it says you can wander your heart's content, discovering the corners of Paris tourists rarely see. And then if you were to flow to the next sentence, when you've had your fill, you can simply stride right to the nearest. So the point there is that once you're seeing stuff, the beginning of the next sentence, once you've had your fill, is kind of the part that's latching onto the previous sentence that gives you the hint that that's where it's supposed to go. So that's why H is the best. Everyone get that? Okay, does anyone have any other questions about this passage?
46.
46. Okay. Can I ask which one you picked?
J.
J? Okay.
Sorry, F.
F. Okay. I would like to say one thing really quick about J. A lot of the times when they have an answer choice that says delete the underlined portion, it's most of the time that one. Still check if it makes sense. Don't just like automatically pick it, but definitely consider that strongly because a lot of the times that is. There is a time later on, actually, 52, where that answer choice comes up again and it's just like very obviously that one. So when that comes up, just be wary, but most of the time it is going to be that. Yeah, so the reason it's G and not F, can we agree it's not H? Do you understand why H is bad? Okay, cool. So if you're picking between F and G and you want... The point is that look at the previous sentence, basically, the first sentence of it. One thing is it says if. So from there, normally when you're in a conditional sense, you wouldn't want to just say you immerse yourself in art, You would want to say you will because you're conditional. It's if this happens. But also, this one actually, right after that, if you ever travel to Europe, you will likely want to. And it wants you to stay in that same tense. It's already telling you that it's in a conditional tense right there, where that verb is conjugated by saying you will likely want to, not just you likely want to, right? So it just wants you to follow that pattern, and that's why it would be you will, rather than just you. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
There's another question I think that actually, is it on this one or the previous one, that had something similar? Oh yeah, question number 42 on the previous passage had an extremely similar thing, where it's asking you to conjugate a verb that they had as observed. It says observed the child and provides him. Well, the next verb is what's giving you the context, where it says provides. So then you know that observed had to be conjugated in that same tense. So it should be observes the child and provides him with the tools necessary. So a lot of the times when you have like a conjugation question like that, just look for other verbs in the same sentence or same area, and most of the time you can follow that pattern. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. Does anyone have any others? Nothing? Oh. Okay, let's go on. One more here. We'll go from 61 to 75. Whoever just came in on Zoom, just for context, we're on page 436 of the Blue ACT 10 book. We're about to do questions 61 through 75. I'll put up a 9-minute timer right back here. Once that hits 9 minutes, we will stop and come together and talk about them. Is everyone ready to start? All right, and go ahead. cut it off a little bit early here. It looks like everybody's done. This one, I would probably give a 3. Say this one was pretty easy. They kind of did you nice with the last passage being quite a bit easier than the other ones, but obviously you'll still have to bubble in on the actual test and stuff, so there'll be other things to be thinking about, but good that it went pretty fast for everybody. So let's go through the answers, starting with 61. That one is C. 62, G. 63, C. 64, F. 65, B. 66, J. 67, B. 68, J. 69, C. 70, G. 71, D. 72, F. 73, C. 74, F. And 75, D. Okay, with this one, I would say the more hard questions weren't actually too bad. 66, I'd say, wasn't super straightforward. There was a little bit to think about with that one. It's asking for a contrast, most appropriate and relevant to the essay. And the sentence says, blah, 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 Ireland still generates 13% of its power from peat-fired turbines. Okay, so we're looking for something that contrasts with that. Well, F is wrong because there's not a word of contrast. It doesn't say, like, even though, although, in spite of, something like that. F literally doesn't even say that. So that's not a contrast. So F, definitely no. G says, although the majority of its use is in smaller towns, that has nothing to do with producing power from peat-fired turbines, so definitely not that one. H says, no other countries use peat as a heat source. Okay, fine, I guess. But J is definitely the best there. In spite of modern coal, natural gas, hydroelectric technologies, Ireland still generates 13% of its heat. Or, sorry. Yeah, whatever, percent of its power. But that one makes the most sense because there's a clear contradiction against what, like, they're accomplishing their goal the best there. So does that make sense to everybody? I think that one was pretty straightforward, but okay. And then the only 74 and 75 were really the only two. I don't think I even want to mention 74. I think that one was pretty straightforward, actually. It's saying they just want you to link to the opening, and the opening is talking about the Irish culture and what this means to them, and then F is really the only answer choice that does that properly. So F. And then 75, I know we talked about it a little bit with relevance or meaning questions like this. I talked about this happens at the last question of a passage, where it's going to like say, suppose the writer had been assigned to do this. Did they do this? Yes or no? So they're saying in this question, suppose they were supposed to write about the evolution of power sources. Okay, so I'm not going to look at the answer choices, right? You got to come up with your own answer first. So I would say no, they didn't accomplish that goal at all because we didn't mention any power sources other than this one Irish power source. So no. And my explanation would be that because we only mentioned one power source. We didn't really mention power sources in general. Okay, so when I go back to look at the answer choices, I would eliminate A and B right away because those say yes. That's not what we're looking at. C says no because Ireland is historically unimportant. Okay, well, I mean, it's kind of not relevant. D says because the writer only focuses on the evolution of a single power source from one specific country. That's very similar to what my original thought was, so then I would pick D. Does that make sense? Okay, does anyone have any other questions from those? No? Okay, yeah, that one. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
69.
69 says... Oh, okay, so these ones, you just have to be careful because a lot of the times people forget. I wonder if this is what happened, but sometimes they'll read the question and skip over the word not. So the question is asking which of the following is not an acceptable way. So you want to pick technically the worst answer.
Okay, yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. I had my ACT tutor when I took this class recommended something I'll show you. If you don't want to use this, don't. But I would recommend doing this. If you have a question that says blah blah blah, not something, they're normally all capital, whatever, and then they give you A, B, C, D, right? What that teacher always told me to do was to underline the word not and quick put a line like that next to the answer choices. It doesn't really do anything, but in my head it reminded me that I'm picking the worst answer choice. So if I saw this underlined and I saw this line, then I knew I was looking for something bad, not something that makes the most sense. So you don't have to do that if you don't want to, but I would recommend doing that. It's just another way to prevent yourself from making mistakes. But okay, does anyone have any other questions? Online, does anybody have any? No? All right. Cool. I will let you guys go then.